lifting the voices of those we have lost to gun violence in this country and their families and those survivors. I'm Dr. Benjamin Dowd Arrow. I am an internationally recognized gun expert. I have published around a dozen publications covering firearms and mental health, as well as the social determinants of gun ownership and gun policy support in the United States. My co-host is Brett Cross. Brett?
I'm Brett Cross. I lost my son Uzziah in the Robb Elementary massacre on May 24th, 2022. Since then, we have been doing whatever we can to make sure that, Uzi, as well as everybody else, is not a statistic. So often, you hear that, this is gun violence victims, such and such. What we aim to do here is to make sure that you know the victims, that you realize that they aren't just a number, that they were amazing, beautiful human beings that were taken too early from us.
And our special guest tonight is Miss Shondell Brooks, who is running for office in Tennessee. Shondell, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so my name is Shondell Brooks, and I am running for State House District 60 here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a mom of four. I was raised by two police officers, and I went on to become a parole officer. My parents taught me, justice and safety. I've never seen their guns as police officers. I've never seen it in the house. But yeah, now I'm an activist, and for several reasons. But I'm here. That my best job is being a parent, and I love it.
And that's part of what brings you here tonight, right? Is your role as a parent to talk about your son, Akilah. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So I have four children, including Akilah. Akilah was, let me tell you about Akilah before I tell you, because I know now he's seen just as a victim of gun violence, but Akilah was a computer engineer. He went to school, went to college, did everything to live up to the American dream and to stay out of trouble and to just do right and be a decent person. He was a musician. I would still say is, because his music still lives on. And he was just a loving kid that loved his parents, loved his family, and make sure we understood that he was a great swimmer. I mean, I used to tell him all the time, he's like a fish because of how well he's. But I miss him dearly, on April 22nd, 2018. I felt like a tornado came through my house and just disrupt and interrupt and destroy, in a sense, my family. Getting that call, I woke up that morning 3-something, and I noticed that the boys weren't in the house. And I text them and I said, all is well. Akilah wasn't the kind to hang out, but, or be out late. But that day they were celebrating because him and his brother Abedi had made a music video that they were so proud of. Akilah recorded that. He was a videographer. He was a photographer. He wrote music. He did so much, and he wore so many hats in such a short time of his life, 23 years old. But, like I said, I text and I got that, I'm like, are you guys okay? All is well. And my son texted me back and he said that, but he called and he said, the older one called, the baby, and he said that they were at Waffle House and that someone was shooting. And I said, I knew I was talking to a baby, so I said, where is Akilah? And he said he didn't know. And my heart just dropped. And I'm like, where? My mind just started, my head is spinning, thinking, where? And is he okay? So I got a call back from a baby, and he said that Akilah he found them, and he had been shot. But within that time when he told me someone was shooting, I took off. I don't know how I got there. I got up my bed. I don't remember what I was wearing. And I remember making it over to the Waffle House. And when a baby said that Akilah was shot, I said, where? I said, are you sure he's okay? He said, yes, he got shot in his arm. He's okay. I said, are you sure that bullet didn't pierce him anywhere else? And he said, no, I think at that moment he wanted to believe that his brother was going to be okay.
Yeah.
He held him, watched him bled out. I made it to Waffle House, and the police officers were there, lots of ambulance, the whole chaotic scene. And I said, my two sons are in there. Can I go in? And they said, no, ma'am, you can't go past here. Just a normal thing that they do. And I remember the ambulance coming out, and it stopped and it opened like this, the back. It just opened, and I remember looking inside because I didn't know when they were going to bring him out and where they're taking him. And I walked up to it and I noticed his sneakers. And I started calling his name, and I said, Akilah, 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 and no answer. And I just panicked. Am I like, no, he said he was going to be okay. Why is he not responding? So I took off. The doors closed, and they took off. And I felt like that was my goodbye, or him saying goodbye to me, because...
It's okay. Take a moment. Take a moment. I know that can't be easy to relive. Brett has been there.
Oh, yeah.
It's not easy to relive. Let's take a break from talking about that moment, and let's just step back in time, and let's talk about, he was a musician. You said he was a musician and he was an engineer. Let's talk a little bit about him and his interests and what he did. And we can come back to the heavier stuff in a few minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Because I do know, and I've actually listened to his music. When I first met you, I went home, put it on, and I listened. I'll tell you this: every time I go through my phone and see a text from you, or I see you on Twitter or Instagram or anything, I go back and listen to his music and everything. And I did want to talk on, and I know it gets talked about a lot, but there's a line that he says in his song Prophet, where he says, forget about making a hashtag, let's throw all the guns in a trash bag. How amazing is that? That already, like you said, he was amazing person, a computer engineer, which you have to have brains for that. You know what I'm saying? And was able to already think ahead and being like, the violence it's enough with it. You know what I'm saying? That just goes, in my opinion, to show you what kind of person he already was, And I think that's amazing, to have that to have that foresight as a younger person, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy because when he made that song, I was like, why are you talking like that? I was like, I don't like you talking like that. And, you know, and he just laughed. He just like laughed when I said that. Because, you know, when I listen to that song, it just, sometimes I think about, did he really know that he wasn't going to be here? Because when I listen to his music and certain things he talked about, it's just, you know, it was so many messages and so much to go on, as I feel like he's still talking to me in his music, you know.
Absolutely. And I love that. So like, you know, in our case, we don't have too many videos. We don't have too many sound bites or anything like that. You know how it is as a parent. You're just living in the moment and everything. So I absolutely love that he was able to make all that music.
Yeah.
Because as somebody who does music myself, your music is never really for you. I mean, it's to show you to the world. You know what I'm saying? And for him to have, I was going through his music today, and there is a bunch of songs, and it is so amazing that you get to have that. You know what I'm saying?
It does feel like it might be a way that you can hold on, right, and
Yeah.
keep a part of him. And you know, I'm a firm believer that a person isn't truly gone as long as they're remembered, right?
Yeah.
That, you know, that's one of the things that I think a lot of cultures get right, where they keep the pictures of the family members and they talk about them and they talk down the generations. And you know, even though this is horrible and it shouldn't have happened, there are pieces of him at least that you can hold on to, that you can be like, oh, here he is, and share with the world, where they can get to know a little piece of him. And I don't know how comforting that is, but
Yes.
I know as someone that if I lost, I have a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old. If I lost one of them tomorrow to gun violence, I wouldn't have anything like that, right? I wouldn't have anything to hold on to.
Yeah. Well, start that right now, because I talk about that all the time. We're a family that lives in the moment. I don't have many pictures of me. You know, I don't have many. We just lived in the moment. But so I tell everybody, take your pictures, take your videos, and live in the moment, but document the moment just in case. Oh,
So Chanel, is it, you know, his music, you know, has it provided like any sense of comfort to you, having that for people to listen to?
Yeah, it's so comforting when people say, you know, they send me like lyrics from his music. I know they're listening, and when older people or older white people say to me, they call him Natrix by his name, and they can quote lyrics from his music, and they can tell me how much they love this. You know, there was a song that he was talking about the election. I think it was during Trump's and someone sent me that too, so I can. This is like, this one is for you. Here is, he's talking to you. So
that is awesome.
yeah, when people say, you know, I feel like I know him, and it makes me feel like, okay, so I'm really doing what I need to do, because people are saying, like, I feel like I know him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I want to go ahead and, if you're cool with it, tell everybody where they can check out his music. And at the end of this, when it goes into podcast mode, we would like to play a song, and I'll get with you later on that. But so where can they find his music? since we're talking about it. So I personally go to soundcloud.com/Natrix Dream. Is that the preferred?
Yeah, he has several platforms. Unfortunately, he didn't get it on Apple, so we're working on that to get it on Apple. But it's on every other platform besides that.
Yeah, and for our listeners, his name as a musician was Natrix Dream, so that way you can look him up.
Yeah, we'll like I said, in the podcast mode, in the description we'll put all of this so that because y'all know me, I'm a firm believer of music speaks from it. It's your soul talking, So we're all about music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't use profanity. That's the thing about him.
Oh well.
He's a lyricist, so yeah, he didn't use that at all. But I don't know, I'm so proud.
Yeah, and great music. Absolutely. Like I said, I was listening just again after we talked earlier. I was like, all right. Like I said, every time I'm like, there's my reminder, and I love it. So
Shondell,
we'll get more people to check it out.
And Shondell, I know this might be an impossible question, but in order to get people into his music, what's your favorite song?
Oh wow.
I told you it's an impossible question, maybe. But
that is a hard question.
There has to be at least one that really, really, like, every time you hear it, it's like, oh my God, this reminds me everything, about who my son was and what he stood for and what he believed.
Wow. I think a piece of him is in every music. It depends. In every song, I feel like it depends on what I'm doing. When I'm fighting my activism, it's Prophet. There's so many messages, even now, like in every song there's a message, and gosh, it's hard to choose because, like I said, it depends on what I'm doing, and
Well, I know a lot of our listeners are activists themselves and involved in the activist space. So listen to Prophet. I think that is a good place to start to learn about his music.
Absolutely. So that was, and I know this is hard, and you, like we said before, stop us whenever. But so the unthinkable happens on April 22nd, 2018, which is 6 years ago now. Y'all just passed your 6-year mark. And I'll never call it an anniversary. I hate when people call it an anniversary. It's like, we're not celebrating this.
Yeah.
But so he was 23 years old. And then did you start your activism like right away? Or did it take some time, or how did that come about? Because I had heard of you before I was even in this space, right? Because you got the angry mama fighting for her son. Like, some in the GVP are recognized before you're in the GVP, So how, what was that like? Like, how long did that take for you to get up and like start the activism, which eventually leads into you running?
I feel like in my mind right away because, watching him laying there, cold and motionless, I don't know if I was too, I don't know. I leaned over him and I said to him, son, I am going to do everything in my power, everything to make sure that you get justice and I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen to another family. I mean, my son knows me. He knows when it comes to my children and when standing up for the right thing. That's just me. So I don't think he would be surprised by what I'm doing, but I think it started there. When I saw him laying there, I said, okay, I have to do something. But physically, you know, when I really started was probably right after, a couple months after, when we didn't know what to do, like how to go about it. We just knew we had to do something. We had to change. We had to bring change to what's going on, bring change to Tennessee. Because when I realized that there weren't laws in place to prevent this from happening, I said, God. But
Yeah.
the first trip to DC and, you know, here in Nashville and testifying and pleading and begging, all that stuff. I know you know guys know exactly how it is.
Yes, ma'am. And that's also like during the time of trying to, and the way that I think about this is trying to find your new normal, because you're never going to have your normal life. And I've talked about this a lot, but so you started fighting while you're still trying to navigate your new normal, which is what we did. Also, you know, we started protesting the weekend after Uzi's funeral because of the police situation
Right.
here in Uvalde. So that is incredibly tough in and of itself when you're trying to find, like I said, that new normal, but you're also, you throw yourself into the fight. And the way that I see that is you don't stop being a parent when your child passes.
No.
And this is still your way to be Mama Bear to Akilah. Am I correct in that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So and I know all too well how difficult, like I said, just navigating through all of that. And still to this day, you're 6 years out, I'm 2 years out. I don't think it's gotten any easier. You don't think so as well?
No. I feel he's not here, you know, in the flesh. So I don't think anything can, and I don't think anyone or anything can fill that void. It's always going to be there. So I'm always going to be reminded and feel the way I feel because he's not here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say that time heals everything, and I don't believe that. I believe that time time makes it to where you can like hide it better.
Yeah.
And put it not to one side, but encapsulate the pain while you fight, you know, and then when you get back home and then, you know, you let it all out again. But I don't believe that time heals it at all.
No. And then fighting too, getting up and honoring them with action, you know, getting out there, it just brings some kind of, like you feel like you're carrying them and it feels some kind of comfort in a sense because you know the things that you're doing is in honor of them, our loved ones, our babies.
Still parenting them.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And Tennessee has been historically hostile towards changing gun laws, right? Like, what was it, last year when the two Justins were kicked out of the State House for trying to bring awareness after there was the shooting at the Christian school and then in Nashville there. How do you navigate the hostility that so many there seem to possess towards making it where no other family has to experience what you went through?
Let me tell you, it's one of the hardest things to do. I remember when I first testified and the way I was treated, right? I could not believe it. I was out for 2 weeks after that because I figured, you know, me telling my story, explaining, you know, telling them how it feels losing your child and all that stuff, that someone, maybe just one, would say yes. No, they all said no to me and they passed permitless carry. You know, being there day in, day out, in session, all session. We're there day in, day out. It's hard to watch. It's very hard to watch. It's hard being there and then leaving with no change or things, you know.
And I want to say for those listeners, right, since passing permitless carry, Tennessee now has an extremely high gun mortality rate. They are at 20.5 per 100,000, which puts them above states that we typically, whenever we hear people talk about why gun control doesn't work, they often talk about Chicago. But Illinois only has a rate of, 14.4 per 100,000, right? So, you know, it's, you know, nearly, not quite double, but close, right? You know, a state that when we think of gun violence, we immediately hear the racist dog whistle of Chicago, right? But, you know, Chicago is much safer than, say, Memphis or Knoxville or Nashville because of Tennessee's gun laws. And it's often the Mayo warriors that look like me, right, that are fighting to uphold these gun rights at the expense of families.
Yeah.
I just want to. Sorry, Ben, you made me laugh.
I needed to line it
Did
up.
you say Mayo Warriors?
Yeah, the Mayo Warriors.
That is
quote a
fucking
friend of
great.
mine on TikTok, the Caucasidilians.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and like Shondell was saying, I have been in Texas. So Texas is wild because we have session for 6 months every 2 years, and that's it.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am. That is it. So yeah, we're gearing up to go back to session in January, but for these last
No.
yes, ma'am, every 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so those 6 months in 2023 is just how you described it. There, day in, day out, from 7 in the morning till, I mean, there was times where we were leaving 2, 3 in the mornings after testifying, and to just see. So we had one lady, her name is Troxclair. She is a representative. Literally, they kept us waiting all day to testify and then brought out a pillow and a blanket, essentially mocking us, right? So we have that in common when it comes to Texas and Tennessee.
Wow.
And even right before Uvalde, Abbott did open carry. So it's like they go off of one another, and it's crazy, and it's just heartbreaking. And I know the tears, and I know the hurt, and that shit's hard on your knees, and it's hard on your back, and just walking and hitting every office and just being told no, like, and when they tell you no, it's like they're spitting in your kid's face, like your child is not worth their yes, and it's so infuriating.
I will say that that's still better than what we do here in Florida, even if it is so truncated, because at 6 o'clock, no matter where anybody is speaking, they kick everybody out. And that's the end of the day for the session when we go into session. So sometimes they'll put off the more controversial topics, whether that's gun violence or abortion, until the last 30 minutes, 15 minutes of the session, because they'll be like, oh, we're running out of time. We can't have anybody speak on this. Let's just do a vote. And then they go home.
Wow.
This has me wanting to say a whole bunch of expletives, and I say a whole bunch of expletives anyways.
Yeah. Florida is the worst when it comes to that. Even though in our Constitution it says that citizens have the right to come and speak on, they will invoke protocol rules to cut that time down to speak, where you may only get like 10 seconds to basically come up, I oppose the vote or whatever.
Yeah, and this is and I mean this brings up a good thing, and this is why we need more individuals like Shondell here that fights for the people, because they told us something during our session. They said that, like, Texas, and I'm sure it's every state, but Texas, that capital is where you go to make bills die. Like, we don't pass anything here, and it's because we had these lifelong politicians who are in it for the money, not in it because of their heart, you know? And so, like I said, we need more like you, Shondell, to get in there and actively like bring a big fuck you to these career politicians that don't care because they're all about their pockets.
And you know, to go back to testifying, they knew I was coming to testify the first time, and they all wore AR-15 pins.
Oh, fuck them.
Fuck them.
All of them were, yeah. Now I thought that was so disrespectful, but at that time everything was new to me, so I didn't know. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
They made it
fucking
very
disrespectful.
Yeah.
Oh, that pisses me off so much. And like I said, it's a slap in your face.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss for words right now, and that don't
Yeah.
happen very often
Yeah,
because
I don't
that
even-
just pisses me off so much.
I don't even know
Like-
what to fucking say to that. Like, I want to fucking throw something through my computer screen after hearing that.
The level of disrespect that these people come for, and the thing is that they don't give a shit about guns. They give a shit about the lobbyist money that tells them to give a shit about guns, and that's and by that point you're saying that little bit of money in your pocket is worth more than my son's life, than is worth Akila's life, than all of these victims for money.
Well, we've talked about before things that other politicians have said, but like, let's talk about a Tennessee politician. I don't remember his name. Remind me, Shondell, because I'm sure you'll know. But when confronted following the Nashville school shooting, he was like, you know, about kids dying from gun violence. His response were, people die from lots of causes. He was one of those that voted to oust the two Justins. He lost his position. He lost his next race. But
Right.
that was his response to families that were mad and wanted something done about gun violence, is people die from lots of causes.
Yeah.
You know, and then we had Donald Trump in Idaho say, oh, you just got to get over it. Can you get
and
over it?
that was Burchett. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but yeah, it was Burchett, and he said we're not going to fix it, like straight up, we're not going to fix it. Which part of me is like, well, at least he's like, when they tell you the quiet part out loud, listen, right? But at the same time, why are you not going to fix it?
It's almost as bad as when Rubio was confronted by the Parkland survivors and asked if he would stop taking NRA money, and he said, I'll never stop taking it. I will take it forever because they align with me.
Wow.
This is why we need you in office, Shondell. This is why we need you in office.
And before we get to all of that as well, the elections are August 1st. So here in 3 days,
Yeah.
this Thursday. So for those of y'all that are listening now, if you're from Tennessee, I mean, you know what to do. But everybody else that listens to it on podcast form, y'all be prepared. Y'all be prepared.
Yeah.
So with that, so I went through your website, which is brooksforstatehouse.com. And I was looking through it and looking at the platform and your well, let me see, your priorities, right? Then that's how I love that's how it's spelled or put out, right? These are your priorities. This is not what you think. This is what you're going to do, right? And obviously, first and foremost is GVP, gun violence prevention. Then we have, and before we get, public education is next, then affordable housing, healthcare access. And I love that even in there, it says especially mental health. Because when all of these people that are like, oh, it's not a gun problem, it's a mental health, and then they don't do anything about mental health.
And then you don't, and then people can't afford. But let me tell you about that. My son was killed. My son was shot. Oh gosh, June 10th of last year, my oldest son, and we couldn't do anything. They sent him home within a week of being shot with a bullet still in his brain, in the back of his head. And for me to take care of, just because we didn't have the right insurance. You had to have the right insurance. We found out to get any kind of therapy, they don't even take insurance. You have to pay out of pocket. Who has that? Who has that kind of money to pay for therapy, physical or mental?
No one.
Yeah.
And
that's one of my biggest complaints, right? Like you pay all of this money for health insurance, right? And like thinking about the physical therapy and the mental health therapy. Mental health therapy, I would argue, is one of the most important things we can do for survivors and their families, because of just like as we just saw happen here, you get re-traumatized every day when something is said or mentioned, and yet you have to pay out of pocket. Now, I see a therapist, and my therapist is $125 an hour, a session, right? And I have to pay that out of pocket. Later, I'll get reimbursed for like 75% of it or something, right? But that's 4 or 5 weeks after, which means that I have to pay 4 or 5 weeks worth before I get that first reimbursement back. How many Americans can do that today on the salaries that we have?
None.
This is right.
And so, yeah, I did want to point that out too, real quick. Not only, did you lose Akilah, but your older son, the one you were talking about earlier, who was there when Akilah was murdered, was also shot last year. So in 5 years and a few months after. So you have not only been victimized by gun violence once, it's been twice, and your oldest son as well. And that is how common it is here in America. Like, this isn't, everybody is like, oh, it's like a lottery, it's a 1 in a million. It's not. It's not.
Yeah, it's getting that same call, your son has been shot, not knowing if he's going to make it, taking off to the hospital, same emergency room, get there and we don't know his status, and it's traumatizing.
Absolutely.
To go through that a second time.
How is he doing since?
I mean, if you know him, you probably wouldn't know, but he's not the same person. Physically, he's not there, but I'm so grateful that he's still here with us.
Yes, ma'am.
He's not 100% yet. I'm hoping he gets there, and then mentally, yeah.
And does that has to even then double down your fight in you, like, right?
Yes.
Everybody tells me all the time, I can't imagine. We hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And for me to be the person who is telling you, like, I can't imagine, like that, I can't even put it to words, because what we've experienced, like what you experienced the first time, is more than enough for a life. I mean, it breaks you down and tears you apart. And then to have to go through that or slightly similar a second time is just,
yeah.
It's the fucking guns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Brett mentioned your priorities, and one of them being mental health, right? Like, but do you feel like that your colleagues, if you were to get elected, your colleagues in the state would like help work towards that? Or does mental health serve as a good enough boogeyman so that they never have to do anything about the guns, right? Because if they fix mental health, right, and they fund it, and they make that where people have access, and then the gun violence doesn't stop, and it's still then they have to say, okay, it is the guns, but as long as they have the specter of this other problem, and they can deflect and be like, oh yeah, we need to fix it, and then secretly cut funding, as we saw in Texas when Abbott cut funding for mental health services, right? They, their constituents aren't necessarily going to look up to see why they're not funding it, right? And they'll listen to whatever platitudes, their representatives give. How hard a fight do you think that's going to be?
Wow. I think I've already watched and see how hard it's going to be. I think it's going to be hard. I am hoping at one point that they can really see. I feel like we need to really flip some seats, because them being the supermajority, it's not helping at all. There's no, we can't get any bills passed because it's only 24 Democrats, and sometimes the Democrats are not even. Let's not go there. But
well, and that leads to a different thing, right? And this is why I think we need to get rid of career politicians. I think Brett will agree, is that what we see, like at a national level, is that Democrats don't ever really push to do gun control because they know they'll get blamed for it, right? Like historically, it's always been Republicans that have actually passed it. I will die that the only good thing Ronald Reagan ever did was got the Brady handgun bill passed and the semi-automatic weapons ban, even though Bush allowed that to go away. But because it passed during Clinton's administration, Clinton is blamed, even though the senators that voted for it said they only did it because Ronald Reagan wanted them to. And even look at, dumbass Trump, right? Like he was able to get bump stocks banned, and then he made the comment after Parkland that we'll just get rid of due process and just take the guns first, right? Democrats can't say things like that because they know they'll get blamed. What do you think it'll take to get the people on our side to actually be like, you know what, even if I lose the next election, if I get this passed, it's worth it?
Right. I feel like, even Democrats or Republicans, I feel like you have to experience what we've experienced, because I see where the Democrats, I don't understand. I feel like you have to go through something.
You got to have your heart behind it.
Yeah, because they're not getting it. They're not getting it.
Shonda, I want to push back just a little bit, okay? So respectfully. I think that it's only the Democrats and Republicans that look like me. It's the white men, right? White men have the least amount of empathy, right? Because we don't experience oppression. We don't experience hardship, really, right? Like the hardest thing that we might get, to quote Bo Burnham, is they don't have khakis in our size at Dillard's. Right? Like that's the most hardship that we face. And because we don't experience things like racism, we don't experience sexism, we don't experience classism, usually because we're at the top of the hierarchy, when other people are talking about how these things are affecting them, we're like, you're just not working hard enough. It's just meritocracy, blah, 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 blah. And it takes us, and if you can look at experience like John McCain or Dick Cheney, right, their children coming out, for instance, as gay or whatever, to make them actually care about the LGBTQ community, or losing a child to gun violence for them to actually care about gun violence, right? I would argue it's people that share my intersection.
Well, and you can also, I mean, we saw it firsthand in Tennessee, right? I mean, there's a reason why they're called the Tennessee Three, because they were going to throw Justin out, and Gloria stood up with them. And then when they voted back, she was the only one. That first vote that they did, it was just her. And we saw that. We saw that live. We saw that in person. You cannot tell me that there was not blatant racism behind that, because you're going to throw out the two brothers, but not Gloria, right? And I love Gloria. I love both Justins. I know them. I love them all to death.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why Gloria stood up as well,
Yeah, so feel free to disagree with me, Shondell, if you want to. Like, I will accept
No,
that.
I totally agree. And I've been telling people all the time. I mean, I get these calls that say that I don't belong there. We don't want you to represent us, and just a lot of racism thrown my way already. And I don't know. I say it all the time. I've been ignored by the Republicans, underestimated by the Democrat, and that's one of the main reasons I'm running, because it's going to take someone like me or me,
Yep.
you know, someone that fully experiences and these life lessons that I have learned that to be in office and do what it takes to make sure that you know, this doesn't happen again, or stand up for people that are dealing with what I'm dealing with, you know, whether it's gun violence or rent, or, you know, high rent, or, you know, just different things that, I don't know, it's Tennessee.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Well, and then
real quick, Brett, and then I'll go to you. Like,
Yeah,
unfortunately, it has often fallen on the shoulders of black women to save the community, to save the country, right? You know, if we look back in history, it is the sacrifices of black women that have led to the most progressive changes, right? Like, even in our current social movements, Black Lives Matter exists because of the efforts and work of black women, right? And I'm kind of pissed at my fellow Palm Patriots for putting that burden on people who are already marginalized.
absolutely. And then to even go with that, and once again, I'm reading your website, you know what I'm saying? And one of your things is government transparency and accountability, like we were talking about with the lifelong politicians, right? I'm reading this and I love it. Says Shondell advocates for campaign finance reforms that reduce the influence of money in politics, and that is one of the leading things that we always talk about. The NRA giving money to these people and nothing happening. If we took money, the NRA money, out of the government, these people, like we talked about earlier, would not be wearing these AR pens. You know, they wouldn't be telling us essentially to go F off. You know, they don't have the testicular fortitude to tell us that to our face, but, you know, in a roundabout way. But I love it. Like I said, everything that I'm seeing is perfect. Government transparency and accountability, support for men's mental health, which is something that isn't talked about hardly at all. We suppressed that like crazy. I myself did, until, you know, we lost Uzi, because I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong. You go to work, go home, nothing wrong. And that is so far from the truth. So even seeing that, and once again, women's rights are so, you know, y'all don't have the rights to dictate what to do with your body. And then to even see you, though, like, even reach across and be like, look, yes, I'm fighting for our rights, but I'm fighting for men's rights too, when men do not do the same.
Right.
So that is amazing to see, because yeah, mental health is a problem we talk about all the time. Ben's in therapy, I'm in therapy. You know, it's living through what we live through. You know, and how it is made to be like, oh, well, men, you can't cry. Throw some dirt on it, walk off, and everything. Like, I love seeing, like, your support for men's mental health.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I mean, I don't feel like I've, for the past 6 years, sit down and actually sat there with a therapist, and more I'm seeing that I need it, you know, even after running for office and the attacks and, you know, being faced with so much. I realized that I need to, after this, I'm going to have to sit down and talk with someone. It's important. I didn't realize how important it is until everything happened.
But at least you
how much-
realized. At least you realized, right? Like Brett was saying, men, we don't typically, right? Because and I argue as a sociologist now, I speak as a sociologist, that it's our socializations that tell men that the only expression that we're allowed to make publicly is anger, right? We can be angry, but we can't be sad. We can't cry. We can't be depressed. Any of that. That's weakness, right? So men, typically, we don't go to the doctor, and we damn sure don't go to psychologists, right?
Yeah.
Like, think about the men in your life. How often did they go to the doctor when you didn't force them to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, you know,
when mama didn't make them, huh?
yeah. I make them.
Yeah, right. And that hegemonic masculinity, that toxic masculinity, as we often call it, right? Like, that's not good for men, right? It's definitely not good for women because it puts women in that box where you're oppressed, but it's not good for men either, right? And I argue, is one of the things that leads to the events that unfortunately brought you to us tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're approaching that 10 o'clock mark, so why don't we end on a happier note, talking a little bit more about, Akilah, maybe like as a kid, like what was he like, and then we'll shift gears when we hit 10 o'clock. So if you want to take the next 7-8 minutes and just kind of like your favorite memory as a kid or something that he did that, just really stands out.
Gosh. I don't know. Everything is your favorite now. When, I think if he was here, I would have had one favorite memory or something that he did. Now it seems like it's everything. He was very, 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 very competitive. He was very competitive. He wanted to win, and very smart kid. Very smart kid.
I mean, he was an engineer, so that's a gift. I couldn't take those classes. That's why I'm a sociologist. So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Did he have like any like weird food likes? Like, one thing that we talk about Uzi all the time is he liked Takis on a Nutella sandwich, which is the grossest combination, period. Did Akilah have anything like that? Like a weird food combination? Or
I don't know, he put a lot of mayo. He ate mayo. I did not understand that. That would make me throw up. But he put a lot of mayo on his sandwiches. He made sandwiches all the time. He ate burgers everywhere we went. I'm like, you're so American. We're in a Mexican restaurant. Can you find something else? He's looking for burgers.
I do the same still. I do the same.
Gosh. I don't know. He's such a loving and caring person. He cared about people. And I'm not just saying that because of my son. I went through, a situation where I needed my kids. And Akilah took that time out from school to work and make sure that we had that extra income to.
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious. I think it's obvious he cared about people just in the way that you talk about him and the work that you do now, because our kids are a reflection of us, right? And, I see you, and I can't imagine someone being radically different from you.
Mm-hmm.
That is a great point.
But
he was always the brain behind everything. He was quiet and didn't hang out much at all, really. he didn't do the clubs and unless he was performing. Just overall good kid, and it makes you wonder a thing. I remember my son was 12 at the time, the youngest one, and asking me questions like, "Gosh, how could you be such a good person and something like that happens to you?" Having to explain to him that it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, doesn't matter, good or bad, Republican, Democrat, what your thoughts on are, nothing. Those bullets are not judgmental at all. They don't care. They just rip through lives.
Yeah.
They rip through people and then rip through the lives of everybody else who is left here.
Yeah.
And I know that you've probably had the same thought that I have. Played out the what ifs in your minds a million times. Like, I wish I would have been there instead, and people just don't seem to realize that even though the rest of the world moves on, this is, it's a big news thing. And then a month, 2 months later, everybody moves on. That we're still stuck. You're still stuck. On April 22nd, 2018. Like your clock, well, for me anyways, doesn't move past May 24th.
Right. Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Well, let's go ahead and start prepping for that next changeover. We'll shift gears a little bit in the second half, kind of talk about your career moving forward as a politician, hopefully elected in the state of Tennessee. What we can do to help each other, especially those that have experienced the unthinkable, but also to help prevent these things from happening. How we can motivate each other to turn out to vote, to get that vote out, to make sure that we are turning over those seats like you talked about, to get people to want to make these changes. So everybody who is just joining us, you are listening to Stories from the Cold Dead Hands. I'm Dr. Benjamin Dowd Arrow. I'm an internationally recognized gun expert. I have published numerous publications on guns, mental health, health and well-being, social determinants of gun ownership and gun policy support. My co-host is Brett Cross.
Yeah, I'm Brett Cross. I lost my son Uzi in the Robb Elementary School shooting on May 24th, 2022. And man, we do everything that we can to keep his name and his face remembered, to keep his legacy continuing, and to do everything that we can to make sure that this doesn't happen to another family. Because I'll tell you this, the hardest thing you will ever have to do in life is to pick out your child's casket.
Yeah. And our special guest tonight is Shondell Brooks, who is running for office in the state of Tennessee. Shondell.
Hi, so I'm Shondell Brooks, of course. I'm running for State House, District 60 here in Tennessee. Chose to run when my son was killed in the Waffle House mass shooting. I decided I need to prevent this from happening again, and because my son spoke against guns, he spoke against violence, I feel like he already set that mission and that vision and that path that I needed to take, because it continues to happen here in Tennessee. And the change that we need, I feel like I need to step up and do what I've been doing for 6 years, taking it to another level, and taking my fight on the inside. Like I said, I've been doing it for the past 6 years, so.
Yeah, and we get that all the time, right? Like I get it all the time. Well, why don't you do something about it? Like we don't do enough about it, right? Like all of our activism and everything, but you literally like put your money where your mouth is. You're like, I'm going to move this. You're not listening to me now. You're gonna listen to me when I am, your co-worker, your equal, whatever, however they want to see it. Because I know a lot of politicians, and it pisses me off that they kind of look down on civilians or whatever they want to call it and everything. But you're running. It's looking good, right? And so you do this where you're like, now you're gonna have to listen to me, and I love that.
That's right. Like I said, I've been ignored by the Republicans, underestimated by the Democrats, and I feel like this is something I have to do. You're going to have to listen to me now. Mm-hmm. I have a message, I have a vision and a mission, and I'm ready to.
And I love. I was looking at your endorsements too. You got some pretty wild names, like awesome names endorsing you. You got the Tennessee Three, which I absolutely love them. You have Everytown, Brady, Planned Parenthood, Moms Demand, Equity Alliance Fund, National Women's Political Caucus of Tennessee. You've got former senators, current state senators. You have Candace King and Melissa Joan Hart. So you really have people like that have these platforms and are helping, saying Shondell is who we need. And I think that is, like, I'm reading these names and I'm like, wow, because I couldn't even get Ben to endorse me if I ran for something,
But I know you.
People don't. But no, I think, like I said, the really big names endorsing you, and people seeing that, like we talked about earlier, we need people like us. We need people that have faced it. We need people that are doing it out of their heart and out of their soul and not for money.
Yeah. And Shondell, real quick, Brett was reading from your website, but why don't you tell our listeners, like, what your goals and vision, what it is that you want to see?
Well, I have my priorities. I know I'm going to be faced with a whole lot. But, of course, number one is gun violence prevention. This is something that interrupted my life, took my child away from me. So, of course, it's priority. And, in Tennessee, we don't have any gun laws to prevent this from happening again. Simple as permitless carry, unacceptable. Police officers go through training every year. They have their trainings. After I spoke to them, they're like, they're complaining. They're like, why are we arming teachers with 40 hours of training, and they have to train the entire time throughout the year. And, it's anyhow. So gun violence is number one for me. Background checks, making sure that guns don't get into the wrong hands. I feel like background checks are the foundation of all gun policies. Safe storage. Too many young kids are picking up guns and not only injuring themselves or taking their own lives, but their siblings, or, it's unacceptable. We have to store you want to carry your weapon, you need to learn how to store it as well, and make sure it's in a safe place. Red flag laws. I feel like if we had that here in Tennessee, maybe my son would have still been here. If your family member is experiencing any kind of, mental illness or any kind of episodes where they're, you feel like they don't need to be carrying a weapon, we should be able to intervene and call in the right people to make sure that those weapons are removed, whether it's temporarily or permanently. We have to make sure that, again, guns don't get into the wrong hands. Then we have women's rights, where Roe versus Wade. We have to reverse that. There's no way women should have access. They should be able to, we as women, and I'm the only woman in my race, we should have control of our own bodies. The government shouldn't be able to tell us what we need to do about our bodies. That's between us and our doctors. I have a daughter, and I worry about her, and I have a granddaughter. I worry about her all the time, that when she do decide to have children, how it's going to be. And, this reversing and our rights is unacceptable. I'm definitely going to be voting against that. I'm going to be voting to make sure that, fighting to make sure that we have Roe versus Wade back in place. No, unacceptable. Teachers, I feel like teachers, first of all, they're not getting paid like they're supposed to. They're not getting paid, they're underpaid, and then they wear so many hats, right? And then now you're asking them to carry.
Right, and to add on to that real quick, right, 80% of teachers are opposed to carrying guns. Right, and the ones that are not, the 20%, that's like football coaches and shit, right? Like the macho men who think that they can stop these things because they play too much Call of Duty or watch too many movies, right? But women overall are opposed. And as a teacher,
all districts.
And
what
as
is a good thing? None of the districts pick that up. So the school districts. So that is a good thing.
Well, I can say as a teacher, I'm a college professor. As a teacher, I could not, even though I'm qualified to stop something like that possibly, if it were one of my students, I couldn't do it, right? Because as a teacher, you have a relationship with those people in that classroom. I would hesitate. I would freeze because I wouldn't believe such a betrayal would come from someone who I was nurturing, right? And I can't imagine, like I only see people for 12, 15 weeks, right? Unless they take classes with me again. I can't imagine if you're with somebody for a year and, and then are expected to possibly harm a child you have been nurturing.
Well, and then not just that, but then people don't think about the cost, right? Teachers, like you said, Shondell, do not get paid nearly enough. You will look, if you look at any teacher that if you look on their Facebook or their Twitter or whatever, there's wish lists to help because they have to go out of pocket to buy stuff. So then you're telling me that they're going to have to go out of pocket to buy a gun, out of pocket to get training because our schools aren't paying them enough. Our school districts aren't. And the school districts aren't going to provide the guns and provide the training and provide all of this. So that is even more out of a teacher's pocket. And it's just unacceptable when that is a reactive measure instead of a proactive measure. Our teachers should not have to be cops. Our teachers should not have to be bodyguards, security guards. They are there to help flourish our children's minds, not to be Call of Duty warriors.
And real quick before we go back to you, Shondell, I want to add to that. We see that, like, if the cops can't even stop it, as Brett's family experienced, how can we ask people who are not trained to do it?
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah. 376 officers were held off for 77 minutes by one kid with an AR. And our teachers are supposed to be able to, without training, be able to do what kills cops, kills kids, kills everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like it's.
Yeah, and they're supposed to do something that police officers, with all their training, were afraid to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, we get off on tangents sometimes because that really pisses us off. It really does.
Yeah, the armed teacher thing is one of the things that really gets on my nerves, right? Like, because we thought about doing that here in Florida back in 2016, 2017 during that legislative session. And luckily, it did not pass here. But that was one of the things. And like, so I had, talked with colleagues here and at FAMU. And, you would hear things like, oh, I'm not going to teach this topic anymore because I don't want to upset somebody who may be bringing a gun to class, right? Because they want to have everybody armed on campus.
Yeah.
Well, and you said that that y'all's the districts turned that down.
Yeah, the school districts. So yeah, none of them picked it up. No, no. Yep.
Thankfully, but Tennessee, y'all's government was trying to do that, to enforce that.
Yep. They passed that law. They were expecting that they were really gonna pick it up, and that is such a scary thing to think about. You're not thinking the teacher is there armed and is to protect your child. You're thinking, as a parent, just I don't know. I don't know. I don't know it's scary.
It is scary, and I'll say this. So I had a teacher, and overall, I love teachers. We talk about it all the time. Like I love teachers. They don't get paid enough. They don't get their flowers. But as in with any profession, you have the wackos, right? I had a principal who literally, when I was in junior high, went crazy. He lived on a house on campus. He was throwing shit out of his windows. He was threatening kids and everything like that. And we were supposed to like be okay with him having a gun and everything like that. When we literally saw him go crazy, that scares me. That's scary. What if a teacher is having an off day, is packing, and my son says something smart ass?
Well, I published a paper last year that looks at the implicit racial bias of white Americans in gun policy, and what I found is that there was a 225% greater odds of the more racist a person was of supporting arming teachers. And I mentioned a couple of things that happened in America, like in Atlanta, there was a chemistry teacher, I want to say chemistry or physics, that told a 15-year-old black girl that if he had a gun with him that day, he would shoot her. Right now, let's just say that in a perfect world that these white teachers would not shoot their black students. What does that still do to a parent that is sending their student to school knowing that these racial biases exist?
Oh my God, it's like that.
Did he get fired?
I don't know. I couldn't find that information. It did make national news.
And that was in Atlanta.
Yeah, it was in Atlanta. And there was another story out of Seattle, it's all in my paper, where a substitute teacher had the cops called on a 6-year-old black boy because he was scaring her. A 6-year-old.
Who the hell ever been scared of a 6-year-old?
Wow.
And then we also have the issue where we've had numerous students get guns because the teacher left it in the bathroom or just laying on their desk and forgot about it.
Yeah, and these are the things that, and I'm surprised that Texas hasn't done that, hasn't told us to, right? They just told us to all have armed guards or whatever. But yeah, it is terrifying that Tennessee allows that or wants that to happen. Like I said, it's reactive, not proactive. If we did something about the gun issue, then we wouldn't have to have our teachers have these things, which like we were just talking about, gives more access to gun violence. Because as we know, more guns does not equal less violence. More guns equals more violence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's terrifying that we want to say, hey, we know that you're teaching math and algebra and the Pythagorean theorem, but here, pack while you're doing that.
Yeah,
it's fucking wild to me.
We're living in scary times. I don't know what it's going to take for Tennessee to realize that there have to be some kind of change. I think it's going to take all of us
I think that's a good segue, right? That right there. What can we do, Shondell? What can we do, those of us who want change to happen? How can we support you, families like you, and politicians like you?
Oh Lord, I don't like that you're calling me a politician, but okay.
Well, you ain't one of them politicians.
You're not. Yeah, you're not one of those politicians.
You one of our politicians.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
That's right. What did you ask me again? I'm
So
sorry.
how can we? Let's start with how can we support you as a person, as you know, somebody who has experienced this. What can we as the community do that would be supportive of you? Let's start
Am I
there.
right?
Yeah.
I think people have to realize what is at stake, and we have to have people get out and vote. People have to vote. We have to vote these people out. If you're not going, we have to vote them out, and we have to run. There's so many people that are running for office here in Tennessee, and I'm super proud. I'm hoping that we're able to flip seats and bring some change to them. But we have to vote. People have to vote. We have to vote. We have to. I can say it more. We have to vote.
And I want to
It's so-
say too that a lot of people, it's the presidential election, right? We know that. We have a great candidate now for the Democrats. I'm so excited for the first time ever to see a presidential race. I was kind of meh about voting for Biden again. I was meh voting for him the first time. Wasn't much more excited the second time, but I have been energized over Harris. But that shouldn't be our focus, right? The presidential election is not the most important election, right? I would argue our local and state elections are vastly more important than president, vice president. Would you agree?
I agree. I think people need to understand that people have to vote in every election for us to bring the change that we need to see. Because a lot of people just come out and vote in the presidential election, and it's not enough.
Has
It's not enough.
Is Tennessee one of those that moved the governor's race to the midterm? We did that in Florida, and since they did that, we've not had a Democratic governor.
Oh God, we have. Well, you guys know what we have.
I think Texas is the same way as well. I believe it's midterms. I'll have to check that, but I believe so.
Yep.
And same thing. We've gotten Abbott for 3 consecutive fucking sessions.
Yeah, like unfortunately, people on our side of the aisle don't like to vote in the midterms. That's why I was like, the state elections are so super important. And many states, especially Republican states, have moved the governor's race to the midterms because our side doesn't turn out. So we moved it in Florida back in the 90s when Jeb Bush was still in office, and we have not had a Democrat in the office since then. I mean, unless you want to count when Charlie Crist briefly changed his affiliation from Republican to Independent to Democrat right before he left office.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
But
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's vote, and what a lot of people don't realize is that it's not it's not even the president that makes the laws. They just check yes, check no, bare minimum, right? It is your senators, it is your state reps. Those are the ones. And if you want laws to be made, if you want rights to be had, you have to get out and vote. And we see a problem in that. When you look at registered vote, and I don't know in Tennessee if it's the same way, but especially in Texas, you have all these registered voters, but then people don't get out to vote. And then essentially they're screwing themselves, because how are we going to sit and whine and gripe about how things are if we're not getting out to vote for the people like yourself that actually care, that actually are doing this from their heart? So yeah, absolutely 100% vote. And I do like I'm just seeing this too because I'm looking at your website to see how to help as well, but this hashtag that is on there, fight like a mom. That right there is, ain't nobody fight like a mama fight.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah,
And so, no, go ahead.
no, I said once the country understands that, because when women fight or when a mom fights, we win. So
Absolutely, and we see that everywhere too. Like we see moms to men. We see mothers against drug driving who got the laws changed and everything like that.
Black Lives Matter. Like, yeah, pretty much that's why I said at the beginning that women, in particular black women, have been at the forefront of social change for as long as this country has been here. And it shouldn't be that way.
No, we should all do our part. So also, aside from voting, you can contribute on your website, which is brooksforstatehouse.com. I also know, like Ben said, to help you in your race, but to help you as a person, I know that y'all have the Aquila de Silva Foundation.
right.
You want to speak about that?
Yeah, we founded the Aquila, myself and the kids founded the Aquila de Silva Foundation to honor him and what he stood for. Yeah, where we have scholarships for students that are impacted by gun violence and are trying to escape that and go on to a different scene, to college, or families that are affected by gun violence, or
Just continuously uplifting our club, and that's the only way I can describe it. You know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
That shirt you're wearing, is that a foundation shirt? I love it, so I want one.
Oh, let me see if I can show. Look. Yeah.
Oh, there's that line. Forget about making a hashtag. Let's throw the guns in that trash bag. How do I get one of those?
I can send you one.
Awesome. I love it, and I will rep it proudly. Absolutely.
Yeah, Manny designed it.
Oh, of course. I've got my walk shirt, in the house too. I will say I'm gonna cut the sleeves off, because that's just how I do. I didn't.
I was gonna say that's what you do.
Yes, ma'am.
And here I am in long sleeves. Brett's cutting his off. Just like,
Oh yeah. Yeah, you know me, dude. I gotta show off my Uzi tats all the time. So
Oh,
so the foundation, there's your campaign. How can we
Right.
help? How can we help the families that go through this? Like, what can we do as individuals when we know that someone has experienced this? Like, what would help you, for instance?
he's asked me to, and I know it's a hard question.
yeah. Gosh, what can you possibly do? Nothing is gonna bring us that comfort. Nothing is gonna bring our family members back. So I guess standing up and fighting with us to prevent what happened to us, right? What happened with us, not
Yeah.
to happen to the other families.
Yes, and I say it all the time. It's easier to fight before you're in our shoes than it is afterwards. And I wish, and I'm sure you do too. I'm not a person that has a whole lot of regrets. I kind of feel like the past has happened. I can't do anything to change it. I just got to move forward. But one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't fight before I lost Uzi. Because if I would have fought before, could that have changed something? Would that have changed something? Would that, would I have like in our situation, would I have asked more about the schools? You know, would I have asked more? Would I have fought as I would have fought as hard?
Yeah, and I mean, and I've always been an activist, right? Like I've marched in numerous different, marches, whether it's the Women's March, Black Lives Matter, March for Our Lives. Like I have always been an activist, but we know that that's not every American. I mean, what was your experience with that before this happened, and like how much has it changed since?
Um, how has it changed since?
And you're asking about like the fight, like, or what?
Like,
Because I was a little confused.
like engagement, like like for instance, like I've
Like
been
activism.
activism. How has
Oh.
that?
Everything happened, or
Yeah, like for instance, like I've always been an activist. I don't know what would happen if I experienced what you or Brett experienced, right? I don't know if it would decrease because of the despondency and pain, or if it would increase, if it would do like it did for both of you and like light a flame inside of me to do even more. Um, so
Yeah, I wasn't an activist before. Were you, Shondell?
I would say that I was, even being a parole officer, but it's a different take when you experience what we've experienced, right? Everything else that I was doing didn't have really to do with gun violence.
mhm,
Like I said, when you lose a child or a family member, something like that, or even something cancer or something, that's the fight you take on. So I feel like I don't know, for me it became more intense and more, I
Yeah,
don't know,
for-
it's personal. It's personal when you're affected personally.
yeah,
It becomes a totally different fight. Especially
it's like all encompassing, right? Like that's what I do now. It's just all encompassing because we don't want anybody else to feel this. Like, yeah, it just all encompassing.
yeah,
And then you have other children too, so you're thinking, I have to not only be there for them, but you have to, in a sense, you want to protect them and you want to make sure it doesn't happen again to your family or to any other family.
yeah. Yeah, and I can understand that because especially like the idea of it being personal, right? Like because any protest that I take part in, any activism that I do, it's not necessarily because it affects me personally, right? Like I've not lost anyone to gun violence. I don't experience oppression from law enforcement or structures because of the color of my skin. I don't experience marginalization because of my sexuality or my, gender, right? Like, so I take part in those things because I experience it indirectly through friends and family and things that have experienced that, right? But
we
I would
need
imagine
that.
it changes.
Yes, we need that though. You don't like when we say we need people to fight before they're in our shoes because it's that much harder. We need more people like that who will stand beside us and fight. Shondell was talking about earlier all those nights and days at the Capitol and everything, and it tears you down and everything. If we could flood these capitals, if we had people that would come to the capitals with us and literally, I'm going to say shut it down. I'm not talking any J6 shit or anything like that, but like just flood the corridors. Like we're here to testify for this and show these politicians that this is for real. You might not care about your kids, but we care about ours and everything. So we need more people like that. Like just because you're not affected by gun violence doesn't mean that you can't stand up and fight it with us. Just because you are not, you don't experience the racism doesn't mean you cannot stand up and fight and say, hey, I stand with you, or sexism or homophobia or anything like that. Any group that you are in, we need outside help, because yes, our numbers are growing. Unfortunately, we say it all the time, this is a club that nobody wants to be in, but we can stop people joining this club if more people who aren't affected yet stand up and fight. Sorry, that was my rant.
I would think too that, you know, there's this probably fear that people have about becoming actively involved. Like, what would you tell someone who's like, I don't know how to protest, or I'm afraid of punishment from law enforcement for protesting? So what would be your advice to young people who are wanting to join these fights but either don't know how or are afraid to?
What happened to my family can happen to yours. Anytime. It does not, gun violence does not discriminate. So, I don't know. Like I said, you have to be personally impacted to totally get it, because before my son was killed, that was not totally the fight. My direction was different. But I don't know. You just have to have a heart for people and the love for people to actually want to take on a fight. Because people, if they're not affected, if they're not affected, they're not out there fighting. I remember going to the Capitol by myself for years and leaving out of there crying in tears and being sad because I was by myself, or me and my children. And then when Covenant happened, we had a mass amount of people that came out. But I don't know. Just don't wait until it happens to your family to.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah, and I would say to even go further, and you can look up, and no matter what the fight, obviously we're going to talk about gun violence prevention, but no matter what fight, there are organizations and everything. You can look for them. You know, you can look and see when an organization is doing a rally, or when an organization is speaking. I know, like you and I, Shondell, we both of our children are on the Shot Line, which for those that don't know is a website that Change the Ref, which is ran by Manny and Patricia Oliver, and March for Our Lives got together and it recreated our children's voices to call our federal senators and representatives and everything. There is always, like I said, me and you were there. We were there. It was the 6-year Parkland date, and people came. Like, there were people that came that stood witness and everything, and that's even fighting to and just sitting there and listening, and just showing your support. People, I get it all the time. People will be like, I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to this. I don't know how to that. And most of the time I'm like, we just need you to show up. There is enough of us loudmouth motherfuckers that can do the talking. But even just showing up to places, showing up with you when you were going to the Capitol, that would have been fighting, you know? And I don't think enough people realize that, is that you don't have to talk. You don't have to be loud. Just showing up and showing support goes further than you'll even realize, you know? Because if we look back at any period in time when changes were made, it wasn't millions of people talking. It was some people talking and a million people following, you know, and showing their support and standing there and standing in solidarity. And I think when people look at it like, I don't know what to do, you just show up, you know. That's my thought anyways on it.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah, because I mean, what you're saying, like when you showed up at the Tennessee Capitol and everything, Same here in Texas, but it even goes further than that. When we're going to our school board meetings and city council meetings, where they're not firing any of these officers that just sat there in the hallway and just didn't do anything while our babies were dying. We just needed people to show up and just stay with us and be like, no, this is wrong. And people are afraid to, and it really sucks, because we're not just fighting. You're not just fighting for Akila. You're fighting for everybody. Nothing that you or I say will ever bring our kids back, but it can prevent somebody else's kids from doing, essentially succumbing the same way.
Yeah. So, how is your race going in Tennessee?
I think it's going well. When I knock on doors, first let me say campaigns are super expensive. Donate. Didn't realize how expensive it is to run for office. But I'm grateful to all the people that have supported me financially and in every way. It feels good to knock on doors and listen to people, listen to their issues, and hear them say that they're going to support me. People showing up at the polls and moms crying on my shoulders and giving me big hugs and saying how, proud they are, and, and telling me why they're supporting me. Feeling like they can have a voice through me, and feeling strength because of the step that I have taken. It's going, just to hear that, which I know I'm going to win. I hear it, I see it. But even if I didn't, that alone makes me feel good that what I'm doing and me taking that step, how it makes people feel. It's really, really encouraging.
I mean, you got an endorsement from Clarissa Explains It All, so
Yeah, I'm grateful for all the endorsements that I've got, the support. People are really supportive, and they're ready for change. And they're saying I'm just talking about guns, but when I hit those doors, those are the things people are talking about. People are living in fear, and they're scared. And we have parents walking around where I remember talking to this one parent, and he has a trans child and was terrified. He even let their neighbors know what we were talking about. But every child deserves to be safe. But I think the race is going really well, and I can't wait August 1st to celebrate.
Yeah, that sounds like, that's going to be an awesome night for you. When those results come in, and you can rate. Hopefully you've got some champagne sitting on ice. It's going to be ready to go to crack open.
Real quick, Ben.
Yeah.
Wait, go ahead, Shonda.
No, I said the win is not just for me, but for all the children that didn't make it back home, all the families, all the moms that are experiencing what I'm experiencing, feeling what I'm feeling. That's why I'm out here, because I feel me being their voice, standing up for them. That's why I'm fighting. That's why I got in this race, for the people that feel like they can't do it or don't have the strength to do it, or whatever reason.
See, that right there, that's why you deserve to win, right? The
exactly.
Centering it on other people. What were you about to say, Brett?
Well, I was going to say, I'm not the Tennessee Three, and I'm not Melissa Joan Hart, but I'll say it publicly. Me personally, I endorse you. I don't know how much that means or anything, but
A lot.
you've got mine. I mean, I can't vote, but I endorse the hell out you.
I would totally vote for you if I was in Tennessee. I'm just going to say that right now.
Thank you.
So you got both of our endorsements.
So,
Thank you. It means a lot.
but yeah, it will be an important victory, right? Not just though for your constituents. It will be a personal one for you because it will show you that this fight has been worth it, right? Like, because I can't imagine, the sacrifices that you're having to make right now to do the campaign.
Man, it is a sacrifice. My God, I've been standing at those polls for 3 weeks, early voting,
Mhm.
and it has not been easy. 7:30 to 7:30 or 5:30. It's not.
Yeah, so you're losing time with your family, you're losing time with loved ones and friends, and luckily you know pretty much how this is going to turn out. But imagine if you didn't and you were doing all of that, right? Like hanging on to each moment just to see, and asking yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And then when you win, then right? But this celebration is something that you're going to have, and you already know what it's going to be. But the celebration is to show that part is over and that the real work can begin, right? That's really what you're celebrating.
Yeah.
And that real work is why they chose you, because they know you can do it.
Right.
And yeah, and just the sacrifice, like you said. I mean, it's do what?
You broke up there, Shondell.
No, I lost my train. I was going to say something. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh no, I'm my bad. But yeah, just the sacrifice itself. I mean, apart from everything, is amazing. People don't realize the sacrifice of just fighting for your own child, but much less fighting for your constituents' children. And that's where I think we see a big difference in you and who you're running against. Is I take us out of the equation, that we know each other and and we've worked together and everything, but just from you speaking tonight, it, like I said earlier, it's the heart, it's the soul, it's not about money. And that is what I feel that the regular everyday people need and want to see. People are so, and I'll say this, people are so tired of the suit and tie. They want normal. They want regular people. They want everyday people like you, like I, people that look like us. Like, girl, you are rocking blue hair and I love it. And that is who we are. You're not trying to be somebody else to get into this position. You're not, you're being authentically you. And that is what, at this point in time, I feel people want to see and want to hear, is people being authentic, not telling you what you want to hear, not, trying to, Mr. Gladhand everybody, but just, look, this is who I am. And this is what I'm telling you, and that's it.
That's right. And that's why I say all the time, it's not about the Republicans or about the Democrats. It's about the change that Tennessee needs. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. There are some changes, big changes that needs to be made. And that's why I'm running. It's not about the paycheck. It's not about the fame. I feel like I've been doing this for the past 6+ years. And
that's our soundbite, by the way. That's what's going on TikTok, just so you know. But, you did mention something I do want to just ask, because it's mostly curiosity. So in the state of Florida, to end up on the ballot, you have to pay the state $10,000. Is there a fee in the state of Tennessee to get on the ballot? Yeah.
No. Oh, my God. No. We had to sign a petition. I had to go around and get almost, I think it's 70 or 75 signatures. And I went around and got all those.
Yeah, we
I
require a
come-
petition in the state of Florida, and depending on what race, it gets higher and higher. A friend of mine, Alan Ellison, he ran. He was originally running for Rubio's seat, and the Democratic Party forced him instead to shift seats. So he ended up running for a congressional seat out of central East Florida. But yeah, like he's got videos on TikTok like talking about it, and he had to, he showed it one day when he had to go turn it in, $10,000 to the state of Florida just to get on the ballot, or they wouldn't consider him. Because in our state, even a write-in isn't considered if they haven't paid the state the fee to be on the ballot.
Wow, talk about the system not built for regular people like me
Yes.
to run for office, because that is ridiculous.
Isn't it? Isn't it wild? And we
It's
wonder.
almost like
Well, I was gonna-
it's almost like they want to keep their buddies in.
Yeah.
You wonder why all the politicians look like me, right? Because what average everyday American has that much money just laying around, right? And he made it. He was able to get on the ballot. He's a young black man. He was able to get on the ballot, but only because of the people that believed in him and donated to his campaign, right? He had a very strong grassroots organization, but the district, unfortunately, they moved him into was heavily Republican, so he didn't really stand a chance. But they wanted to run Val Demings against Rubio, and unfortunately, she did not do well against Rubio. And I feel like Alan probably would have done better, but that's neither here nor there. He raised quite a bit of money, just small grassroots donations, and that's the only way he was able to get on the ballot. So I was curious if Tennessee had something similar.
Look, I'm surprised that Tennessee doesn't have that, but no.
Well, we are approaching, we're in the last 13, 14 minutes of the show, so we can start winding down with final thoughts. So if you want to, take, the next 5-6 minutes or whatever, and just give your final thoughts on everything that we've talked about. Anything you want to talk about, the floor is yours.
Oh goodness. What do I want to talk about? I would talk about Akilah every chance I get.
Then let's talk about it.
People, I don't know what I want to say. So much I want to say. It's so much to come out. We have to, first, we need to get out and vote. We have to realize what is at stake. They're eroding our voting rights, our civil rights, our women's rights. Wow, they're trying to take all our rights away. The LGBTQ rights. I mean, people, we have to see what is at stake. We have to vote. We cannot have Trump in there again. We need to vote. We have to vote. I can't stress how important this is. Voting is our voice. If you want to see change, you have to vote or run for office. Don't wait until you're in situations like I am, I guess. I don't know. It's so much I want to say. It's
Got time, you can say as much as you want to.
oh gosh. Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on your show.
We thank you so much for getting on, because I know, like I said, I know how hard it is. I know when it comes to the media that they will take you can interview for 30 minutes and they take it and clip it down to 30 seconds to put what they want to put. And I also know how hard it is to talk about our loss. It is re-traumatizing all day, every day. And it's not even just talking, it's understanding and realizing that you don't get them back. And it's hard. Um, and I love that you have told us about who Aquila was, um, his music that keeps him still here with us, which is something that I love, both as somebody who has lost a child and as somebody who loves music as much as I do. Um, and it's just everything that we heard about him is just, like Ben said earlier, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Um, he was an amazing person, intelligent as hell, and he gets that from you. And we see that and we know that. And that is why I stand behind you in everything that you do. You know that we've talked many a times. Like I said, we were in DC together, which as hard as that was, hearing our children's voices like that, we weren't alone because we had others like us. And it's just, I love that I've gotten to know you. And even if I hadn't, just hearing where you stand, how you stand, not once did you say anything, political, really. And that's what I talk about all the time is people ask me, why did I get political? I'm not political. They made it political and we're just fighting. And everything that you said, it states that because you're coming from heart and from soul. And I cannot appreciate you and your fight. I know how hard it is to get out of bed every day and then to run for an office and put all of that time. It's just, your sacrifice is amazing, and I'm here for it all. You're truly inspiring. Now I can't run for shit because I say fuck too much, and people just hate me. But you've got it.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. That means so much coming from you. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Brett, anything else you want to add before I wrap us up?
Real quick, fuck a school voucher plan. I see that that's coming up for y'all as well, and y'all just like Texas, and it's y'all doing the same shit over there. So I like that you're against that as well. But if I have to like double down on something, is like I said, the sacrifice that you are making is so amazing. And I will say this over and over, and I don't care who gets tired of hearing it. Nothing that I say or do, nothing that you say or do will bring our children back, but you can prevent other people from being in our shoes. And that is ultimately what we want. If we could make a time machine, we absolutely would, but we can't. So we have to look towards the future and to try to close this door of this club that you and I are in. And it takes people like you who are fed up and, you're putting your money where your mouth is. You're going for office. You're making change. It takes people like me that say fuck a lot and challenge Greg Abbott and everything. And then it takes folks like Ben here who haven't experienced that type of pain, but still support and fight and lift our voices up, because he doesn't want it happening to him. He doesn't want it happening to his children, to his family, to his friends. And we need more people like you and Ben.
Yeah, and even beyond that, to anyone else, right? Like, I don't want anyone to experience this. I say this all the time, Shondell, so you're going to hear it from me tonight. Brett is one of my best friends. Brett and I shouldn't know each other. You and I shouldn't know each other, Shondell. You should not even be running for this office because of the things that you're experienced that led you there, right? I do what I do, and that puts me in contact with a lot of people who have experienced what you and Brett have experienced, and I shouldn't exist, right? There should be no such thing as a gun scholar in the United States that studies these horrible things, that talks to the media about these horrible things, that gets to know the families who have experienced these horrible things, right? I wanted to say something else too, that what Brett touched on is that children's lives, your lives, that's not political, right? That should never be political. A public health issue should never be political, right? The gun violence that we experience is a public health epidemic, and it should not be political. Americans, regardless of their race, their education, their background, their class, whatever, should be coming together and saying, how the fuck can we keep children from dying? How the fuck can we keep from losing more family members to this very preventable thing, right? And so we, and now I'm talking to the palm-colored, Mayo warriors again, need to step up and stop relying on marginalized communities to save our asses and pull us out of the fire. It is time for white men and women in particular to step up and do the work. Be on the front lines and do the work. Lift up these marginalized voices and do the work. Because I can imagine, Shondell, you're tired, right? You are tired. And it should not be on your shoulders, and I am so sorry that it is, but I am grateful that you stepped up and did it. Because so many don't. With that being said, I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening to us tonight. I want to thank my co-host and our special guest, Shondell Brooks, for being here. I am going to be looking so forward to watching your win. And, if you give a speech on the news on August 1st, I'm going to be tuned in to watch. And in the meantime, we are going to...
Real quick,
go ahead,
Ben.
go ahead.
Real quick. So if you want to follow Shondell, you can on Twitter and Insta. It's the same on both of them, right, Shondell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so on Twitter or X, whatever people want to call it, and Insta, it is Natrix Dream Mom. So Natrix Dream, like Akila's stage name, Mom. And also you have an Insta for your campaign, correct? And that is at Brooks for State House. So y'all show Shondell some love. She is an amazing person, and I don't say that, lightly. She is sacrificing. She is fighting for your children. She is fighting for you.
Yeah. And so, that's good to shout out the social media. That lets me know, since you're not on TikTok, Shondell, to put like this clip that I'm going to put on TikTok, to also put it on Instagram and tag you in it so that you can see.
I am on TikTok.
Oh, are you? Okay, it's the same. Okay, then I'll find you. But the last thing that I want to say before I close this out is say their names. Say their names, right? Akila should be with us still today, right? We should be listening to new music from Natrix Dream. We shouldn't be, holding on to what little we have. Say their names. But with that, we're going to call it an end to the night. And we will see you all next week when we return with stories from the Cold Dead Hands. Hopefully we will reach a day where there will be no more stories to tell. But until then, good night, signing off.